Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans. Live from St. Paul, Minnesota, we welcome you to another season of Your Legislators, a roundtable discussion featuring state lawmakers who are prepared to answer your questions and discuss important issues affecting citizens of Minnesota. Now, here's your moderator for tonight's program, Barry Anderson.
Good evening and welcome to this week's version of Your Legislators. We're delighted that you have joined us for an opportunity to have some conversation about some different topics tonight. For those of you who were with us last week, you know that we had Legislative Auditor Jim Nobles, who gave us an hour of his time, and we had some terrific conversation about some of the work that the Legislative Auditor does. This week we have another special program featuring the two most recent appointees to the Minnesota Supreme Court, Governor Dayton's first two appointments to the Minnesota Supreme Court, Justice Wilhelmina Wright and Justice David Lillehaug, and we're going to be having a conversation with them about some of the things that they have been doing over the last year and a half, and some of their background and history. And it's a great privilege to have them with us this evening. As you know, the reason for our special programs is that these last 2 weeks the legislature has been on break because of the Passover and Easter holidays. And so as a consequence, we're just thrilled that we're able to bring you these two special programs. We will have an opportunity to visit with Justices Wright and Lillehaug about the issues of the day as it relates to the judiciary. Unfortunately, because this program is taped, we won't be taking any questions live from the audience. We hope that you will join us again next week when we will be back with, as they say in the trade, our regularly scheduled programming, and that would be the legislators who will be back in session, and we will be dealing with what we hope are the final 2 or 3 weeks or so of the session. So let's begin this evening's special program by introducing our guests and giving them an opportunity to tell us a little bit about themselves. I'm going to begin simply by moving to my left here, and I would ask Justice Lillehaug if you'd be so kind as to tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and where you're from, and we'll do the same then with Justice Wright. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, good evening. I'm David Lillehaug, and I am the most junior justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court. I was appointed by Governor Dayton about 11 months ago, following his appointment of Justice Wilhelmina Wright. I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Of course, the Twin Cities was the place we'd come for the big concert, the Twins game, and so on. So it's logical for me eventually to settle in Minnesota. My dad was the band director at Augustana College in Sioux Falls, and my mom was a homemaker. I went to Augustana College, a little tuition break there, and then off to Harvard Law School. After law school, I came to Minnesota and clerked for a federal district judge here, then out to Washington, D.C., where I practiced law and worked with Walter Mondale for a period of time. After we lost 49 states, I thought it was a good time to come back to Minnesota. Which I did. Practiced law, was United States Attorney, which is the federal government's chief prosecutor and civil lawyer in the state for about 4.5 years in the 90s. More private practice of law, and then eventually appointment by the governor. Being on the Minnesota Supreme Court really is the capstone of my career. I love the job, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it with you today.
We'll have an opportunity to visit a little bit about that, a little bit about your background. Justice Wright, I probably should have started with you because, of course, on many matters on the court, we do them in order of seniority, but we're driven here by the order in which we have of the cameras. So that has to yield to the practical details. But tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Justice Anderson, for inviting me to this program, and it is always a pleasure to convene with Justice Lillehaug and you. I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, and came to the Twin Cities a little more than 20 years ago, or close to 20 years. I need to get my math straight. Close to 20 years ago, and not only fell in love with the opportunities to work here in public service, but also it was a wonderful opportunity for the love of my life, my husband, and I to be in the same city together. We had been in a 7-year long-distance relationship that had focused a lot on our career development, and finally we got to put career development and family together. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to serve here in Minnesota. So growing up in Virginia, my parents were college professors at a historically black college. Many of the students that they had were first-generation college students. My parents were as well, and education was a real value in our household. It was the means for us to make a difference in the world, and we really valued that throughout our growing up years. My parents made lots of sacrifices for opportunities for us. I went to high school in Norfolk, Virginia, and then went on to college at Yale. I studied literature there and had this quandary toward the end of my time at Yale as to whether I wanted to read wonderful novels, which I thought would be a wonderful way to make a living by teaching literature, or whether I wanted to help people. And the way to help people, in my view, was to work in the area of law. And the opportunity to be of public service to others was something that won out in the competition of my interest and desire. I went off to Harvard Law School from Yale University and studied there.
We're heavy on Harvard Law School tonight. I can see that already.
And then from there, I clerked for a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, Judge Damon Keith, where I found my clerkship to be such an important and formative part of my legal career. I then went to Washington, D.C., much like Justice Liljehaug, and worked in a practice that worked with school districts to provide quality educational programming and opportunity for students in public school districts, and really loved that work, was traveling around the country to do it. But then that opportunity to come to the Twin Cities arose. I served with Justice Liljehaug. He was the U.S. attorney, and I was an assistant U.S. attorney, so a federal prosecutor representing the United States in cases in which we were prosecuting violent crimes and complex fraud. While I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Violence Against Women Act was enacted, and so I did quite a bit of work on behalf of the United States in prosecuting domestic violence cases that had a federal jurisdiction, so some type of state line had been crossed, or the violent crime had occurred on an Indian reservation here in Minnesota. So after that, I realized that this was that there were some other opportunities that I wanted to pursue. One was I had always wanted to be a judge after clerking, and because of the open process that we have here when there is a vacancy, I decided to toss my hat in the ring, and I was appointed first to the trial court bench and served there for 2 years in Ramsey County, and was a trial judge appointed by Governor Jesse Ventura. He then gave me the opportunity to serve on the when a vacancy arose at the Court of Appeals. I served at the Court of Appeals, then Minnesota Court of Appeals, for 10 years, and then I was appointed, as Justice Liljehaug referenced, by Governor Dayton to the Minnesota Supreme Court. So having served on all 3 levels of our state court, I feel that I've really been given an opportunity to play an important role in the development of the rule of law, but also with my trial court roots as a trial judge, recognizing that the law affects real people. And whenever we are deciding a case, we are thinking about the people as well as the law that affects them, and determining what the just result is and what the precedent should be.
You know, before we talk about the work of the court, I want to pursue a little bit some of the key figures in your respective lives. I'm going to start with you, Justice Liljehaug. You mentioned the work that you were doing for then Vice President Mondale, or past Vice President Mondale, and talk a little bit about your relationship with him. And he's an iconic figure, of course, in Minnesota history, and very well known to our greater Minnesota viewers because, of course, as I recall, he comes from Elmore originally.
Elmore, Minnesota, yes.
Right. So talk a little bit about
it. Salon and Heron Lake.
There you go. Very good. Very good.
He's the son of a Methodist minister. and really one of the most important figures in my life. Regardless of one's political views, everybody agrees Walter Mondale is a figure of great integrity, great intellect, and who's performed enormous public service for Minnesota and the United States. He was the Attorney General, he was a United States Senator, he was Vice President of the United States, and then Ambassador to Japan. I had the chance to work with him really close up. I was what in the trade is called the body person. Somebody running for president has somebody usually considerably younger to carry the briefcase, write the short speeches, make sure the coffee's delivered in the morning. So I was the one who woke him up in the morning and the last one to say good night in the evening. And so you really get the feel for a person that way. And I can tell you he is an extraordinary person of great integrity. It was really fun traveling with him because the public picture that he has is someone who's very stolid, kind of the
very Norwegian,
Scandinavian. Yeah, in fact, people would say he would wear the full Norwegian, a blue suit and a red tie and a white shirt. But privately, you know, when he lets his hair down, it's just hilarious and very contextual humor. Mm-hmm. And it's just saddened me that over, you know, his many years of public service, most people haven't seen that side of him, and I got a chance to do that.
And I would ask you, Justice Wright, because I've heard you talk about the judge that you clerked for, Judge Keith. That name is not going to be familiar to Minnesotans in a way in which Walter Mondale's name would be familiar, but from your description of him, he is an equally historic figure in other respects, and I think might still be serving as a retired judge, if I'm not mistaken. Tell our viewers a little bit about Judge Keith.
That's exactly
kind of an interesting
right.
story.
Thank you. Judge Keith was appointed to the federal district court bench in the Eastern District of Michigan, so Detroit area, by President Johnson. And then he was elevated to the United States Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, which is a region of state or federal appellate courts on which he serves, Michigan being one of them, Ohio, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And I was with him at a time when he was on the Court of Appeals, and he has a strong sense of the importance of the law and its effect on real people. And so that was one of the real values that he instilled upon me. He's a kind man. He's a generous man. And while my fellow law clerks and I would be, as you can imagine, you know, debating the law in sometimes very esoteric or abstract ways, he would shoo us out of his chambers and say, you go down to the district court. You go see the real people that are affected by the decisions that our court will be making. And from a very early time in my career helped me understand that the law really affects real people. And if it doesn't make sense to real people, if it doesn't seem fair to real people, then it has to be examined. And an explanation has to be made in a way that real people can understand the court's work. So the commitment to service and to public service that I came into the law with was really amplified and cultivated by my experience with Judge Keith in his chambers. He's a wonderful, warm, and personable man, and he is someone who I am still in contact with on a regular basis, and is someone who, you know, is very proud of me, and I'm very proud of the fact that I clerked for him.
That puts his years of service at approaching 40 years.
That's exactly right.
That's a long career. All right, let's talk a little bit about what the court does and how it does it, maybe some differences between what appellate courts do and trial courts do, because the public may not be fully cognizant of these. Justice Lillehaug, you had a career as a trial lawyer, representing clients and so forth, appearing in courts around the country. Tell our viewers a little bit about how the court system is organized and what the difference is between the state Supreme Court and the other courts in Minnesota.
Happy to do that. By the way, I am the only justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court to come directly to the court from private practice. So the two of you certainly have a lot more experience at the various levels wearing the black robe, but maybe it's okay for me to talk about it as somebody who fairly recently joined the court. Our state courts are organized basically in 3 levels. It's a 3-layer cake. The bottom layer of the cake is the district courts, and more than 1 million cases of various sorts go through our district courts, ranging from traffic tickets to first-degree murder and everything in between. And of course, not just in criminal courts, but civil courts and all the different kinds of civil courts, the family court, the probate court, on and on. Some enormous cases with big law firms and armies of lawyers, and others are conciliation courts where ordinary people show up and state their case. It's not exactly like the People's Court and Judge Wapner, but a little bit like that. Then that district court handles the vast majority of cases. And remember, you see on TV trials all the time. Our district courts are busy. They have trials, but 90 to 95% of cases get resolved by way of settlement or dismissal somewhere along the way. So part of it is just marshaling all these litigants and the numbers of cases and doing it in an organized fashion. Our district court judges really do a good job. Then the cases that where decisions are made, either by motion or by trial, if somebody's unhappy, and usually in a case there's at least one person who's pretty darn unhappy at the end of it, they have the right to take an appeal to the Minnesota Court of Appeals. By and large, appeals are a right. If you don't like what's happened in the district court, you can take your shot going to the Minnesota Court of Appeals. We have 19 Minnesota Court of Appeals judges. They sit in panels of 3 judges, and they hear and decide appeals. And again, that resolves most of the matters that appear before them. Some of the cases settle along the way. And then finally, the third layer on the cake, I don't know if we've got the frosting, but we're at least at the top, is the Minnesota Supreme Court. We are 7 justices in almost every case appointed by the governor, sometimes elected in the first instance, but we all stand for election at some point. And we handle the cases that are left. We have the chance to pretty much decide which cases we're going to handle, with the exception of some cases from the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals, the Tax Court, et cetera. So we look at somewhere around 800 cases a year to decide which ones are the important ones, which ones do we need clarity in the law, which ones will affect us all on a statewide basis, and of those, we choose, we hear argued, and we decide a little over 100 cases every year with full opinions. With 7 justices on the court, as you might imagine, there's often agreement. We issue a unanimous opinions about 3/4 of our cases. But in the remaining cases, different reasonable people can view things in different ways. They view the law in different ways. Not based on ideology, not based on politics or personalities, but on the precedent of the case and what the principles are behind the case. So sometimes there will be majority opinions and there will be dissenting opinions. But by and large, our Minnesota Supreme Court has a reputation as a very collegial place. It's a place where we listen to one another, sometimes agree, sometimes respectfully disagree. And by and large, the decisions are very highly regarded by the rest of the country.
Justice Wright, you, along with our Chief Justice, you're the only 2 members who've served at the district court. I guess the Chief Justice did not serve at the Court of Appeals, so I guess you're the only member of our court that has served at all 3 levels, if I've got that right.
And with 3 different governors appointed. Was it 2? Was it Governor Carlson and Governor Dayton?
Governor Ventura and Governor Dayton.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, we've got the outline of how it works. What observations you could share with our viewers about the differences between serving at all 3 of those levels?
Certainly, thank you.
And I should tell our viewers that it's important that they understand that our full court recognizes that, although we view these as, we are the state Supreme Court, but the reality is, for all of us, including those of us who might have legal issues that ourselves might need to be resolved, it's the district court where the heavy lifting goes on.
Yes.
So tell our viewers a little bit about how you would see that.
Well, the district court, a single judge, but so many other people in the court and in the courthouse who make such a difference in the decisional process of the case. And so with the district court judge, there may be, if it goes to trial, a jury, and that would be either 6 or 12 individuals, depending on the nature of the case, who would be helping to decide the facts in a case, what actually happened. Sometimes the judge is in a position to do that, but many times you have a jury, and many of our listeners may have had the opportunity to serve on a jury in the course of their lifetimes. It's a real honor to do so. It's selected randomly, and I think many people get the best understanding of how our courts work by serving on the jury, and many come into the courtroom with jury duty with some sense of dread, and those who have served I always spoke to the jurors at the end of a jury trial, and they always felt so honored to have been involved in the decision-making process in the way that they did. At the trial court, judges are handling both civil and criminal cases. They are many times, if it's a criminal case, determining what the appropriate sentence is. We do have sentencing guidelines, and we also have something in the criminal cases, and particularly in the felonies, is a pre-sentence investigation. And that was always one of those experiences when I read the pre-sentence investigation report that was prepared by our probation officers. I got a better sense of who that person was standing before me. And we all know that individuals are more than the one act that brings them into that courtroom. And so it's an opportunity for the court to get enough information to determine, using the sentencing guidelines and the information in that pre-sentence investigation report, what it is that would be the appropriate punishment, but also the appropriate services many times to provide for rehabilitation too. Moving then to my experience at the trial court, I was amazed that the parties often were not present there. It was the lawyers who were
at the Court of Appeals.
At the Court of Appeals,
right.
The lawyers were making the argument, and many times. Their client, the party who was affected by the case, may be there, but oftentimes they were not. And for me, it was then important when the parties weren't present to recognize again that adage and that real truth that Judge Keith impressed upon me, that the law affects real people. And we are governed by the rule of law, but the rule of law really needs to make sense to real people. It needs to be able to account for the human condition. It needs to, if it's in a criminal setting, to have some sense of what is appropriate punishment, but also what is appropriate to bring about rehabilitation. And so I marvel, first of all, my experience at the trial court I value heavily. I draw on it every day when I look at the files that we have at the Supreme Court. But I also marvel at the incredible work that trial court judges do, because they really are the people within the community and the people within the court room who are sitting as neutrals, rendering important decisions, and then making sure that the individuals who are affected by the decision understand what's happening and why it's happening, and work to ensure that a just result occurs.
And picking up on what Justice Wright just said, I have never been a district court judge, but of course have, in private practice, been in the courtroom a lot. I guess the closest to a district court judge I've been is judging high school mock trial, which is a great activity, nowhere near the real consequences that Justice Wright was stating. And what I find most impressive about good district court judges, things are happening fast. This is in real time. You're making decisions in the heat of a trial, which is can be one of the most heated human experiences that you can have. And so you need to know the rules, you need to know the law, you need to know when to take a break to figure out what the law is. But some of it is just good old-fashioned common sense, and we're really lucky in Minnesota that regardless of who our governor is and which party he or she belongs to, our governors generally have appointed very good district court judges, and I'm very proud of that.
It's probably useful I would ask both of you this question to talk about where you are now in terms of serving on the Minnesota Supreme Court. Was the concept of being a judge or serving as a judge, let alone serving as a justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court, something that motivated you? Is that something that was in your background as you were growing up? Let's start with you, Justice Lillihaug.
Yeah.
Out there in South Dakota, were you thinking about being a judge someday?
Well, the decision for me back in late in high school and early in college is, am I going to be a band director or a lawyer? And my dad was delighted that I was going to be a lawyer. I didn't really think very much about being a judge until the early 1990s, and I put in my application to become a federal district court judge, and I didn't get selected. I got what could have been thought of as the consolation prize, but for me was just the right thing. It turned out for me at the right stage of my career, which was to become the United States Attorney, the Chief Federal Prosecutor. And I had the chance to work, of course, then with a lot of federal judges and with brilliant assistant U.S. attorneys like Justice Wright. And then I kind of put it on the back burner for a while. And then, in connection with multiple appearances before the Minnesota Supreme Court by way of brief and otherwise, I started getting much, much more interested in the Minnesota Supreme Court because a lot more of my practice was going from federal to state court. So when a Supreme Court justice retired a couple of years ago, I put in an application, was a finalist. Justice Wright was selected, which was marvelous. And then from my standpoint, it was just as marvelous that the next opening, Justice Paul Anderson retired, and I was selected to fill that seat. So, the realization that I wanted to be on the Minnesota Supreme Court was kind of a gradual one. It wasn't like I was on the road to Damascus one day and the light just flashed on and I said, oh my God, I've got to become a Supreme Court justice. And as I mentioned, now that I'm here, I love it.
Justice Wright, how about you? Any long-term career goals way back at your time there growing up in Virginia that you were going to be a judge or a justice?
I have to say no at that time. I grew up and I did not know any lawyers. And had certainly...
Lots of people think that's probably a good thing,
and had certainly never met a judge before, had seen the judge on the Perry Mason reruns, and that hadn't looked all that, enticing to me. It seemed like reading literature was way more interesting and important. And so it really was in law school when I understood that there was this opportunity to be a law clerk for a judge that I started thinking about how that work as a law clerk would be a nice complement or a nice next step for preparation to be a lawyer in my experience. And when I applied, then was hired by Judge Keith, I thought I had, died and gone to heaven. I loved approaching the law from a neutral position, as judges do. I loved the research and writing that law clerks perform for their judges. And I liked thinking about what the just result would be. I have been an advocate for most of my career, so been a lawyer representing a client, either the United States or a school district, and you are representing their interest. And what I like about being a judge is that my client really is justice, and the people I serve are the people of Minnesota. And so the opportunity started creeping into my mind when I was in Judge Keith's chambers, but it was a huge pipe dream. I just thought if ever, but didn't think I would ever. And so it has been a wonderful twist of fate to be able to be a trial judge first and have that experience and serve in that capacity and get to know the dedicated lawyers and the dedicated court personnel who come to court every day and do an excellent job at representing their clients and serving the court so that judges can make good decisions. And then moving to the Court of Appeals, where I thought, boy, this feels like a fairly quiet and lonely existence because the courtrooms are so heavily populated at the trial court. And every day you were interacting with such a broad range of Minnesotans in my work as a trial judge. It was always interesting, and I always had lots of company in chambers and otherwise deciding what we needed to do in a particular case. The Court of Appeals was a lot quieter. A collegial body, and one that was a wonderful experience for me in working again with law clerks and deciding cases now with 3 judges instead of 1. And then the move to the Supreme Court is yet a different challenge for me. It's much of the same tools and experiences that I used as a trial court judge in looking at the law, as an appellate judge in understanding the impact of the law in terms of how it will be received by courts and lawyers, and then how it will affect the people of the state of Minnesota. But now we are the last step in the state system in determining what the state law is in Minnesota. And that brings a level of weighty responsibility that I cherish and feel honored to have, but also that makes the work, as I say, makes me sit up straight and pay attention and make sure that I'm doing the best job that I possibly can with the assistance of not only my law clerks, but the collegial, the group decision-making that we have at the Supreme Court. I love the fact that at every minute of every conference that we have discussing the case after oral argument, I am fully engaged, and I'm learning from my colleagues as much as contributing to the decision-making process. And so it is that part of our work at the Supreme Court that's quite unique, because there's 6 other judges in the room, all of us caring deeply about the work and the importance of it, wanting to get it right, and bringing all of our knowledge of the law and our knowledge of life and our life experiences to bear on our decision-making.
I know you're the interviewer, but let me ask you, when did the light bulb click on for you? When did you decide you wanted to be a judge?
You know, it's interesting. Yes, wait a minute, I'm asking the questions here.
You're in charge.
Yeah,
you're the captain here.
Right. What was it? Who's in charge here? Never mind. You know, I actually didn't have any kind of moment of epiphany. I actually sort of resisted the concept. I wanted to be a trial lawyer from a very early age. You mentioned our friend Perry Mason from television, and some of our older viewers may remember him, and I thought that was pretty great to be able to sit there and ask questions of the witness. And
the defendant always confesses.
And the last witness, I only had that happen to me once in trial, and it came out the other way. My client...
your client confessed.
Yeah, my client, it's a long story. It was not a good day. But the point is that I wanted to be a trial lawyer, and so I went off to do that, and it didn't really dawn on me that I might be interested in becoming a judge. And I actually turned down a couple of opportunities to interview because I wasn't sure I was ready. And finally, at age 44, the phone call came, and I was encouraged to apply. And as both of you did, Governor Carlson had a merit selection process and interviewed a bunch of candidates, and either couldn't find anybody qualified and asked me to take the spot, or found I was the most qualified. But in any event, I had the opportunity to start my career at the Court of Appeals. And I did not anticipate that. I really didn't. You know, I think it might be useful to talk a little bit to our viewers about how we do what we do. And so let me start with you, Justice Lillehaug. I'm a litigant at the Court of Appeals. I don't think justice has been done, and I'm really unhappy.
You're sure justice hasn't been done.
Yeah, in fact, I'm sure justice hasn't been done. I'm unhappy about it. And so I'm going to ask the Supreme Court to take a run at this case. And it's not one of those cases they have to take. So take our viewers through the process about what that might mean in terms of whether or not they're going to hear my complaint.
Well, on behalf of your client, you're going to file what's called a petition for review with the Minnesota Supreme Court. As I mentioned, we get somewhere around 800 of those every year. We sit down twice a month and figure out which cases to take. And your petition is going to be short. You're going to tell us in a few pages why the case is important, why the Court of Appeals got off track, why your case might be of statewide significance, or at least really important in some particular area of the law. And then we will, the 7 of us will conference and we'll decide whether to take the case. And the rule is that if 3 of the 7 justices want to take the case, we take the case. So then it's put on the calendar. Then at that point, now that we've done our work to that point, it goes back to you. And you file briefs. Now, it's always a joke. Lawyers' briefs aren't really briefs. They often go on at some length. We, of course, like short, succinct, persuasive briefs.
Which we rarely get.
We're prepared we get a lot of long briefs, and you know what? I never like it when judges complain about having to read what the parties are saying. That's part of the job description. I knew that was going to happen when I made an application to be on the Minnesota Supreme Court, and by and large, I like it very much. So the appellant, that is the party appealing from the Court of Appeals, will file a brief. Then the respondent, which is the party defending the Court of Appeals decision, will file a brief. Then there will be a reply brief. And sometimes associations and other people decide we want to try to weigh in on the case, and they'll file what are called amicus curiae briefs. They're telling the court why the case is important and why it should come out one way or another. We read all that. Now, interestingly, we very seldom talk about the case at all before there's oral argument. The oral argument occurs either in the state capitol ceremonial courtroom, which soon will be shut down for renovation, or in the Minnesota Judicial Center courtroom. And the gavel comes down, knock, knock. Mm-hmm. We come in our black robes and sit down with the Chief Justice at the center, and then in order of seniority going outwards. And then the appellant, the party appealing, has a chance to make its arguments why the Court of Appeals should be overturned. Now, this is not a one-way communication. The justices are asking questions of the lawyer that's appearing and expecting good and concise answers. And so it turns into a dialogue, not just with the lawyer, but the justices are really talking among themselves by asking the questions, and we're identifying what's important to the other justices. And then the other side has its chance, then there's a chance for rebuttal, and then the gavel goes down again and we leave the courtroom. Then we go into conference. We go immediately after the oral argument to a conference room, and it's just the 7 justices. There are not law clerks, there's not staff, and that's the place where we deliberate about the case. And we'll take as long as necessary so that all the arguments are aired, the pros and the cons, the justice, the injustices are all discussed. Then we'll take a tentative vote. There will be a majority. As I mentioned, often it's unanimous. There will be 1 justice assigned to write a majority opinion, and then if there are dissenters, there will be 1 or more dissenting opinions that will be prepared. Now that, I'm probably going on a little too long, and maybe the process might seem a little bit too long, but the reason why it will take some time before those opinions are issued is because we're writing for the court, not just for today, not just for tomorrow or next month or next year. We're writing potentially for the next 100 years, because with the exception of very few cases that go to the U.S. Supreme Court, this is the last word on the law in the state of Minnesota. And, you know, coming from private practice, I felt that as a pretty heavy burden. When I was in private practice, I would sometimes cite cases from the 1860s because they were good law then and they're good law now. And I'd like to think that when we're writing an opinion that somebody in the year 2114 is going to be reading the opinion and say, well, I don't know if I agree with that Justice Lillehaug, but he sure said it clearly, and I understand where he and the court were coming from. That's the goal. That
is the goal, and another goal is also to make sure that the law is understandable and flows from a predictable set of principles. And one of the things that I think is really important, and I think we achieve quite often, even with very complex legal issues, we recognize that the law the case belongs to the parties in it, and they are first and foremost affected by our decision. And one of my goals, and I know it is of my colleagues too, because we work so hard at writing our opinions in a manner that is clear, that's precise, and a goal that I have is that the party, the person who is affected by the decision, the person whose case it is, can understand our decision, can read it and understand it. Certainly, they will have a conversation with their lawyer about the opinion and what it means. But I think we as a court in working through the decision writing process give each other good feedback about how we can explain the law in a way that is accessible to everyday Minnesotans. And I love that value about us. I love that. I love the collegial, careful, respectful way that we deliberate about a case. We don't always agree, but we certainly are not disagreeable in our deliberations and in our conference. And so the model that we have for decision making, I think, is one that is perfectly created, I think, for decisions being made in important and difficult cases. And that's one of the reasons why I feel so honored to be able to serve in this capacity and feel like the work that we're doing is work that Minnesotans deserve to have done carefully, precisely, and in a fair and just way.
And let me pick up on Justice Wright's point about the opinions being understandable. I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said, you know, if I'd had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. My goal, and I know it's the goal of the other justices, is not to try to go on at great length, but to write clearly and precisely, and we hope briefly. So that people can understand that.
Sometimes accomplished, sometimes not, right?
Yes, it's a goal.
So, Justice Wright, tell me, is there anything about your time on the court now, a year and a half, year and 3/4 maybe almost, anything that surprised you about your time here?
You know, one thing that I have found to be different and challenging about our work, we have attorney discipline cases, and we are the court that's responsible for that type of work, and we have that exclusive responsibility. And when someone hires an attorney, they are hiring an important person to handle an important affair, and it's like hiring a physician, perhaps. It is hiring an expert who can help you navigate a system in a matter that's really important to you, that affects you. And it is so important that the men and women who are lawyers in our court system are ones who have the utmost respect for the law and who are moral people, who are ethical people, and who obey the law themselves. And the vast, vast, vast majority of Minnesota lawyers are just that. But in order to protect the public, when there are some of those lawyers who err, it is important. It's an important role and an exclusive role for the court to handle attorney discipline cases. And we take that responsibility very carefully, and it's a unique experience for me because it's the only, we are the only court that handles those matters.
How about you, Justice Lillehag?
There is nothing that I've learned about the court that's been a true surprise, but I got a surprise in a little different way. You can understand up here what the court does and how it goes about it, and certainly I'd had plenty of experience as a private litigator studying the court and even studying the justices on the court. But what was really a surprise really was kind of my emotions on the first day of being on the bench. I got sworn into the court at 8 o'clock in the morning, put on the black robe for the first time, sitting on the bench with you at 9 o'clock. We heard a case. It was about workers' compensation, which may make some people's eyes glaze over, but it was really important for the people involved and for a number of cases. And then at 10:15, we're sitting in the conference room deliberating, and then we start voting and going down the line, and suddenly I'm thinking, oh my God, this could be a 4-3 decision, and I might be casting the deciding vote. Well, as it turned out, I didn't cast the deciding vote. I with 3 justices dissenting and ended up writing a dissenting opinion. But it was that moment as the voting went down the line that it just really struck me what the enormity is of the job. And again, about how it's not just for today or tomorrow, just for it is for the parties in the case, but it's also for many, many other people. And I guess it was the surprise of the kind of the weight that I felt at that moment. I kind of feel that weight some mornings as I'm driving up to the Capitol, and you turn the corner and there's the Capitol, and that's representing our state, that's representing our people, it's representing Minnesota. I do feel a little surprised just by that kind of flood of emotion. That's my surprise.
You know, and for me, at the risk of interviewing myself, I will just say that the one thing that I had not had substantial experience with before, and I understood it intellectually, but you can't understand it until you actually experience it, is the first-degree murder part of our docket, and the violence and, frankly, the evilness that is sometimes represented by what we see in those files. And it gave me a real appreciation, for example, Justice Wright, for the 288 district court judges in Minnesota who try those cases in the first instance, and the public defenders who defend, and the prosecutors who prosecute those cases, and the jurors who have to hear that testimony in the first instance.
You know, it's interesting that you use the word evil, and I think highly appropriate. We do want to be, we understand the circumstances of what leads people to commit crimes. We understand some of the terrible backgrounds and drug addiction and child abuse and so on, that where people just don't seem to have a chance at life. But on some of the most heinous crimes, I can say this as a former prosecutor, and now seeing the records in some of these cases, there sometimes just is no other explanation that there is evil in the world.
You know, from a trial court perspective, and having tried murder cases as a judge, a trial court judge, the one consolation that there was at the trial court that's missing from the Court of Appeals or at the Supreme Court is that we see just a snapshot of the case, too. And I was always moved by the victim of the offense and the people who surrounded people and victims and helped them through and carry forward with their lives after some terrible tragedy had occurred. Not only were they members of our court staff who provided certain services to victims of crime, but there were also just the family members, the people in the community who stood next to someone who had gone through a terrible loss. And when we only have the event of evil before us, and we don't see the community gather around and support victims and their families, I think it can be a pretty difficult case to comprehend when you are trying to think about how in the world do people survive and live for another day if they're not the victim of the murder, but of the other heinous crimes that occur. There's a real sense of community and support that we have in Minnesotans. We take care of ourselves. We look out for each other. And that's on display in those trial courts as well. And in many ways, I think that can give some consolation not only to the victims of the crime, but to the court staff, to the lawyers, to all of those people who occupy the trial courtroom in the midst of what we've identified as true evil that can have occurred that brought everyone together in that courtroom.
Justice Lillehag, let's talk briefly about some of the folks who work in the judicial branch and give the public some understanding that there may be 7 Supreme Court justices, 288 district court judges, 19 Court of Appeals judges, but that is not everybody that helps deliver justice in Minnesota in the judicial branch. Talk a little bit about who some of those folks are, our several thousand employees, and maybe also say a word about our law clerks and
I want to do a little shout out to law clerks because virtually every judge in our state has a law clerk. And these are bright, bright people who've graduated, usually just graduated from law school, and they're getting some practical experience, and they are indispensable to our work. My law clerk is from St. Cloud. He's going to be practicing law at in a business firm. The law clerks come from a diversity of backgrounds, and we very much appreciate them. We have judicial administrative assistants as well that are very seasoned and helpful at the Minnesota Supreme Court. But it's when you get down to the district court level and you walk into a courtroom, but that's really kind of the tip of the spear. There are a lot of people behind it. There are probation and pretrial officers. There are court administrators, and I should mention, and by the way, trumpet the fact that the courts really are on the cutting edge of technology. And you've been very heavily involved in this, the court system is deeply committed to e-courts, where, we are in the 21st century, where documents can be accessible and filed electronically online. Now, it raises some interesting questions. Does this mean that a juvenile who commits a crime is going to have that information data mined and it's just going to follow him or her around for the rest of their lives? So there are very important questions of electronic access and dissemination, but the courts are moving on that, and we have some very dedicated people working on that. And I've just only started describing the people. I'll turn over to Justice Wright to add a few more.
Well, when I think about the people that populate our courts, it's really the people who are at the counters in the courtroom, in the courthouses throughout our districts, who are providing the human services to people who need to use the courthouse for one reason or the other. And so while we are moving to an electronic file, we will never be without the need for human beings and that human touch. And there are so many services that are provided at the counter to assist Minnesotans, to assist everyday people who are coming to the court for one particular matter or another, and who are using the courts for their most important affairs. And we have wonderful professionals who provide that kind of service.
And as long as we're at it, I want to give a shout out to some people not in the judicial branch, but those would be the court security officers, deputy sheriffs and so on, that are providing security, moving prisoners in and out of jails and so on. They perform important work, they perform hazardous work, and they protect employees of the judicial branch. We've had some very terrible incidents in our courthouses in the state of Minnesota, including the shooting of a county attorney up in Cook County. And that's a concern, because courts are the place where the vital, important things and some of the most, nastiest kinds of disputes are resolved. And it's just very important that our courts operate in a professional, safe, and secure manner.
Let's talk a little bit about what you do outside of the service that you perform as a member of the Minnesota Supreme Court. We'll maybe I'll get to you in a minute. I want to cross-examine you about the literature and the novels and things. But let's start with you, Justice Lillehaug. What do you do when you're not a member of the court, you're not dealing with official business?
Well, I love Minnesota and I love the outdoors. And growing up in South Dakota, as you might expect, I love to hunt pheasants. My brother and I have some family land in Chippewa County out north of Montevideo, 80 acres of CRP, and we like to find pheasants there. And we have the family homestead out in South Dakota. My dad still owns that. And, until recently, that's just been the happy hunting ground. It's been just great. I play a mediocre round of golf, as you will testify.
I can verify that. Yes.
We've got a log cabin, lake cabin in Crow Wing County. We like to head up to St. Louis County or Cook County to go skiing in the winter. So I'm not a great athlete, but I love Minnesota. I love the outdoors and fresh air. Indoors, I love music. As I mentioned, I come from a musical background. So we have tickets to the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, which is one of the great international institutions I like more popular forms of music as well, but we probably don't want to get into that.
Justice Wright, how about you?
Well, my big job, other than being a Supreme Court justice, is being a mom and a wife. And the mom job takes me to all parts of Minnesota. My daughter swims and is a debater, and so I am, one of her biggest fans. I think my husband would be my rival in that regard. And another thing that I really like to do, and it's related to my work, but just it gives me so much energy as I do it, and that is I like to do a lot of school visits, visiting schools, reading to students, talking to them about the work of the court, the various jobs that one can have in the court system. And one of the reasons why it gives me so much joy is, as we spoke before, I didn't know any judges, I didn't know any lawyers growing up, and so to give young people an opportunity to try on a few different jobs and ideas for jobs for size is something that I really like to do. We just had a group of school children from Benjamin Mays Elementary School in our court at the conclusion of a reading program that many of our judges and law clerks and court staff, other court staff, participate in, reading to children at Benjamin Mays and helping them understand and the benefits of reading and develop a love for it. And the children came to Chambers and they were enamored with all of the pictures that I have and some little playthings as well. And somehow they saw a picture of me in a robe and they were fascinated by that robe. And so I pulled mine out of the closet and I put it on everyone who wanted to try it. And frankly, it was just it was one of those heartwarming experiences. And I could see, I think, in the eyes of those children, a glimmer of, well, maybe this is something that I might be able to do someday. And so I like to do that kind of outreach. Our court is very committed to that outreach, and each one of the judges of the Supreme Court, the justices, goes out and talks to young people about what we do.
In fact, on that note, Justice Lillehug, 30 seconds, tell our viewers a little bit about our outreach program, the visits that the court makes and so forth.
Yeah, every year we go to a couple, 3 places, high schools, to do oral argument, and the students will study up on the case. We try to choose cases that are a little more accessible. Then we also get to about 3 law schools a year. So, and typically when we go to a town, especially in greater Minnesota, we'll have a dinner the night before, bring in members of the community and get to know one another. It is a great program.
I want to thank our guests tonight for joining us, talking a little bit about the Minnesota Supreme Court. I want to thank our viewers for being with us. I want to remind you that this is your program. We invite you to come back to us next week and all the weeks that follow until the legislature goes home. We invite you to submit your questions. We'll be back with our regularly scheduled guests beginning again next week until whenever we finish. Thank you all and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's much more about your legislators online at pioneer.org. Find out more about the history of the program, who's been a guest, and watch all our past episodes. There's also a photo gallery, informative links, and much more. You can also get involved and stay in touch by following us on Twitter and join the discussion on our Facebook page. Thank you for watching Your Legislators. Your Legislators is made possible in part by the generous financial support of MAPE members, making Minnesota clean waters, safe communities, quality education, and veterans care happen. We work hard for Minnesotans.